Hi, I'm Russ, and this is our monthly meeting of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy. This month we're at Donald Trump's golf course. It's called Trump National Golf Course, and it's really a neat place. There's a fantastic beach we're going to go down to, one of my favorite beaches in the area. Lots of native plants, as you can see. There's a lot of views, birds, insects. We'll see some neat fossils that I found, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Ask me questions if you have something that comes up. As we walk around, I'm going to be pointing out plants and talking about rocks and anything that we actually see. But if you see something you want to know about, just ask me. And let's start.
We need to sign a model release in case we're on TV or...
Yeah, right, if you, in case you become a star. To do a little background and history, right around the turn of the century, around 1900, the federal government bought a bunch of this coastal property for coastal defense and to protect the harbor area. Right around 1910, the breakwater was completed. Fort MacArthur was actually a World War I site and then developed into a World War II site. Where we were last month, White Point was actually a World War II site and developed into a Cold War site. About 1950s, a family called Zuckerman bought the west end of this golf course area in the late 50s. About 1987, Hahn bought where we're standing now. His name is H-O-N. And Hahn's idea was to put on a Ritz-Carlton, which the land was just not stable enough for that. So eventually he and Zuckerman got together and they actually got plans approved for a golf course, about 93. About 97, Hahn was bought out by Zuckerman, and in 99, a couple weeks before the golf course was to open, we had the 18th hole problem, where the 18th hole fell into the ocean. Most golf courses are right around 140 acres, give or take. This one at its biggest was 106. So when you lose 5 or 10 acres, and not all that acreage fell into the ocean, but when you lose at least several acres and the rest is compromised, there's no place else to make it so it's a viable 18-hole golf course. So about 2003, it went into foreclosure. Shortly after that, Donald Trump purchased it for $27 million with the agreement that he put back the 18th hole. The 18th hole cost at least twice that, at least 50 to 60 million just for that one hole. And what happens, and we've talked about this over and over again about this and why it's slipping into the ocean and all that. But underneath us and where we're standing is a lot of sedimentary rock. And so what happened is that PV used to be underneath the ocean. You have all this north-south current, and it was depositing silt. And so we have about 1,000 feet thick of this sedimentary rock that was underneath the ocean. What eventually happened is that there was a PV Coronado Bank fault that moved and uplifted PV. Now, as this sedimentary rock uplifted, it actually warped and bent. Between these layers of sand and silt, there was ash from volcanic eruptions that were happening underneath the ocean and depositing ash. That ash would later become bentonite, and later that bentonite would become clay. So as this lifted, you have strata bending towards the ocean. You have clay layers interspersed. You have the top of the cliff and the face of the cliff, and you have the ocean eating away the toe of the cliff. So you have this compromised buttress effect where it's starting to be compromised. You have water percolating down into, hitting that bentonite, and then you get this slippage. And that's what happened in 1999 when the 18th hole fell. It happened in 1929 when Sunken City started to fall. It happened in the 1950s when Portuguese Bend started to slide. So it's a constant, ongoing problem, and it will probably not really end anytime soon. But it's abated by what they did with the golf course. So they made sure the whole thing was capped. Underneath the lake is capped. Underneath the greens, there are recovery pipes. So when the water goes down, then when they water it, it's pushed back into these lakes that we can see. So it's pumped back into the lakes. They try to recover all the water, or most of it, and they try to make sure no water is going to overflow and go into the tide pools, which would, you're looking at pesticides, herbicides, chemical fertilizers that would damage the tide pools. One of the restrictions or add-ons when they built this golf course was they wanted native plants, and they wanted bike paths, and they also wanted walking paths. And they have about 8 miles of walking paths, and they have beach access. So there's 4 different beach access areas, and we're going to go down one of these beaches. And one of these beaches is really a neat beach. You're going to love this. Now today's a pretty hot day. It's February, and it's about 80 degrees or something. It's a pretty hot day, 75, 80 degrees. But usually at this beach, it's like a Northern California beach. People go down fully clothed and bring their dogs. I mean, what a neat beach. It's really neat. So we're going to go down there. I'm going to show you a great fossil. Behind me here is one of the few non-native plants. This is called a melaleuca tree. It's kind of common. You see a lot of melaleuca. It's Australian, like many Australian trees. They do really well here. And this smells sweet. Smells kind of like perfume a little bit. And this smells like sage. And this is actually called Artemisia californica, and this is a native plant. This again is not a native plant. This is called golden bush, and this is kind of a native plant. Keep in mind there's about 5,000 native plants in California. 5,000 native plants, wow. So there's a lot to choose from. But about a third of that are native only to California, which means some exceed the borders and all that. So we have some native plants here that I don't know about because they're from Northern California or some other place. And one would be that, oh, there's a hummingbird there. You see that hummingbird? It's right by the plant. It's right by the tree. I can see the green shine on its stomach. I know, there he goes. See him? Okay, now because of the green, that means it's an Allen's, or it's a young. And we have 2 predominant type of hummingbirds. We have the Allen's and the Annas. So let's walk over to this plant and we'll look at it. This is also a native plant. It's called Toyin, Christmas holly, and during Christmas time you get all these little berries. So this is called a Toyin, and it is a native plant. This is a native plant in Celia californica, and so they made an effort, as this is Brassica nigra. These are all native plants. This is a sunflower. This is a sunflower.
Look at this right. He was standing.
Oh yes, there he is.
In the air, right?
Yeah,
in the air.
yeah, they're perfect, aren't they? Okay, let's continue. Now this is a native plant. It's called a arbutus, A-R-B-U-T-U-S, arbutus, but it's not native of PV. It's native of California. They call it strawberry tree because the fruit kind of looks like a strawberry. Kind of weird. People always ask me if it's edible. I've never eaten one unless I eat it and then show up again the next month. I don't say it's edible. It has a reddish stem, kind of neat, large fruit. There's some that are called madrono and madrone, Pacific madrone. This one is not. This is just called strawberry tree, and it doesn't get really large, but it has red bark, neat little fruit. And this is one of the lakes. There's 3 lakes on the golf course, and it's one of the collection areas where they take the water from the greens and pump it back into the lake, and there's an aeration system there. And one of the largest expenses in a golf course after it's done is this constant watering that they need to do. What they've actually done to prevent further slippage on that 18th hole is Donald Trump dug down about 90 feet And he removed all the bentonite and all the clay and all the sedimentary rock. And he also had to re-engineer it and pack it. And like we were saying, it's probably the most expensive hole in golf. But when everything else falls, it'll probably be the last thing standing because it's pretty strong. We're going to walk over there, and I have pictures of it when we're on there to show you. Okay, now we're at the ocean part of the trail. You park at Rotunda, La Rotunda, you walk down, and here we are at the ocean. There's one trail access head there. There's another one on the other side of the hill. And there's 2 or 3 more down behind us. We're going to wind up going down to the ocean. That one's kind of an intimidating one, so I don't usually do that one, especially with people. Now, if you look up, see that orange fence?
Yes.
And you see the pole sticking up? Now go down a tier or 2 and you see a bunch of little poles sticking up. Okay, all those little poles are this. I know it's hard to see. You might want to pass this around. But what that actually is a one of the base end stations that we talked about. When the military purchased this and put in base end stations, the base end stations worked as these little 2-person bunkers. And what would happen is that some target would show itself out there, then they would determine where it is and radio to the command post, and then the command post would get several of these base end stations giving the coordinates. They triangulate, and then they take either at White Point or Fort MacArthur and blast off one of their 14 or 16-inch guns and try to hit it. Then there'd be some observation post, and they'd say, okay, you're 100 feet left, and you're, hey, Coop.
Hey, how you doing?
You're 100 feet left and 50 feet short. So it would be like, and then they do it again. Pretty low-tech war, but that's the way it was in those days. So what we're looking at is those little fences. That's actually a really nice 3-person bunker. There were 6 of them here, and we wound up filling in about 4 of them because it was just, they were really messy. They were filled with junk, a lot of graffiti. So we filled in 4, and we kept 2. And where those little stakes are, there's like a little plaque, and you can read about it. And this is what another one. This is what the actual two-person one looks like, which is the most common that we see. There's some really good ones at the end of Hawthorne Boulevard in the City Hall. There's some that are actually clean. I've been inside those. So, as you can see, the ground is kind of unstable looking. And we're going to walk down this road past the waterfall, and then we're going to go down to the beach and do some tide pooling and stuff like that. So what we're looking at over there, that slump, is where the 18th hole fell. Right in front of the big flagpole and the 18th hole in front, that's what actually fell and slumped down. And this is what it actually looked like after it slumped. You see this? I mean, pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Might want to pass this around because you can actually see a tractor in there.
Yeah. Was
Pretty.
sitting there at the time?
Yeah. I had a friend sitting there at the time. You had to be.
Expensive golf hole in the world.
That's what they tell us. Anywhere from 50 to 60 million. But what you're looking at is, this is the path right there.
We're looking this way, the other way.
And then they actually put it back. You can see this, and that's the same. So what we're looking at there is where it actually slumped. And we're going to walk down on the beach right around there and take a look at it.